All right, good morning and happy Black History Month. Happy 2025. My name's Hakeem Oseni. Um, During the day, I work at Salesforce, and at night, I am on the leadership team of Cyversity's Bay Area chapter. This morning, I am super excited to have a distinguished leader and somebody who I've looked up to for I don't know, the past 10 years that I've been in cybersecurity here in the Bay Area. Jimmy Sanders. Welcome, Jimmy. And
Hey,
thank you.
thanks for having me, Hakeem, and Cyversity.
Thanks for spending the time with us today. Um, so, let's just start off. Maybe tell us about yourself and your journey to becoming the president of the ISSA International.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, my name is Jimmy Sanders. I've been in cybersecurity I've been in technology since '99. So I remember of everybody worried about, you know, the Y2K bug and laughing about that when it happened. And then I got into cybersecurity in 2006. I started off running security for a finance company. And then I joined Netflix DVD in 2015 as part of my journey. And while I was in doing that journey, I had been the president for the San Francisco chapter of ISSA. And then I was at Netflix for 9 years, had an amazing run. And then my run ended at Netflix in January 2024. And I spent 6 months traveling, enjoying life a little bit, being semi retired. But I was always a part of the ISA International Board. And then around July time period, there was a transition, and I became the president for the ISA International Board. And that was an amazing journey, and I've been the president since, and it's been going very well.
Okay, and for those of us who don't know or aren't familiar with it, like it's the Information System Security Association.
Yes.
Maybe tell us about like your mandate, your to do. Give us some flavor of what is that all about, and maybe break it down like from the top leadership view, international, but also on that local level.
Yes, great question. So for me, I love ISA because we're one of the few organizations that don't mandate that you have to do a certificate or you don't have to be a member. And what I mean by that is that you only join up to be an ISA member because you like your people, you like your local chapter. And so ISA is just distributed of many chapters throughout the world, and each chapter has autonomy in terms of how they do their local chapter business. We have a set of bylaws that all chapters have to adhere to, but they're a broad set of bylaws. And I would relate it to almost like the United States and the states of America, where yes, the United States does have its amendments and its laws, but every state can dictate what kind of laws and precedents they want in their own state, and it's very much like that. And so my role as the president and the role of the ISA International Board isn't to dictate what any one local chapter does, but to empower the local chapter. So if a local chapter is struggling, if they want to do an event, if they're doing a conference, or if they just want to let us leave them alone and let them keep doing a great job, we try to do that as well. Um, ISSA, we do all forms of training. My goal as the president is also to be as open as possible. So working with amazing of organizations like a Cyversity, ISACA, ISC Squared, whoever wants to work with us on a collaborative basis, I'm trying my best to ensure that we do that, whether it's on the local level or it's on an international level. Um, we will be having our 40th anniversary of celebration in Dallas on August 3rd through the 5th. So we're going to be teaming up with hopefully Cyversity and everybody else to have a great celebration.
40 years. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a pretty mature organization. Um, So, tell me some of the challenges or the, leading an international organization. So like you're global, I'm assuming, but what's it like? Like what are some of those challenges and how do you
So
figure
the
out your strategy, your roadmaps, and your jobs to be done?
so the challenges is trying to make most of our members happy. I have to understand at the end of the day, you can't make everybody happy, but you try to make and do the best decisions for the greatest amount of members. And that may mean even going against what I want to do, because I may want to do something in particular that I think is amazing and fun, but we'll do a poll or I'll get the board together and they'll be like, Jimmy, that sucks. That's a horrible idea. And I have to either say either I didn't prep the board right, or my idea was horrible. And I have to be willing to own that. Hopefully most of the decisions that I'm working on, I try to work on a collaborative basis, because that's the difference between being a president and being a CEO. A president, you're elected, you try to work through consensus, you try to ensure that you work with the board in a collaborative fashion. Where the CEO, you just tell somebody, go do this, this is my goal, and you can fire them or hire them. You have to also understand that that your international board of directors are elected people. So the members voted them in for a reason. Whether I agree with that reason or not is irrelevant. My goal as a president is to make sure I work with all of our international board members to make sure that we do amazing things for our members. So those are the challenges, but it's not really challenges, because all of our board members, we understand that at the end of the day, we are doing this for the members. It's not like an ego contest. Almost all the international board members on our board have been the president of a local chapter before, or there's some stellar figure, because you can't even get on the international board without being popular throughout most of America. So that's the first step in even getting on the board. And then once you get on the board, you realize that you're working with all these other stellar figures who are strong characters in their own self. So you can't dim them and like put them down, because they're coming to the board maybe with some innovative ideas that you must be willing to listen to if you want to be successful. If you don't want to be successful, then you just keep doing your own idea and ignoring them and at your own peril. So those are some of the challenges that we do. And then the other challenges is obviously geographic, meaning I want to ensure that we reach out to our Latin American patriots. We reach out to our, Chinese, Asia Pacific, European, reaching out to everybody in a way that's genuine and not like kowtowing or doing it in a way that's unauthentic. People say, Jimmy, when are you going to open up a chapter and name whatever location? And I'll answer that, because that's a challenge. We want chapters all over the place, but I don't want any chapters where we don't have the enthusiasm to keep a chapter up. I don't want to have a chapter in Tokyo just to say I have a chapter in Tokyo, unless we have the members that are excited to be part of ISA in Tokyo.
Interesting. I want to double click on a couple of things. So one is, you were like, okay, you have a couple of strong characters or so how do you interact? I mean, you've worked in corporate, so like, what's the difference between like working in your corporation or Netflix or wherever you worked before, and then working with like high-powered C-suite legacy executives? How tell me about that.
Generally, it's not, because people who are used to being in powerful positions, they're used to certain decisions that have an impact on a large radius of people, meaning whether you're at a Netflix company or you're at a Salesforce company, you realize that when you make this decision, it's going to affect tens of thousands, if not millions of people. And so everything that you do, you have to, and this is what I was saying about prepping. You don't make this decision when you actually get to the meeting. If you're making the decision when you get to the meeting, you did the meeting wrong. You should have been prepping the people well before, letting them know the pros and cons, letting them do the research. And then when you go to the meeting to actually make the decision, you have well-informed board members and well-informed leaders. The worst thing that you can do to a leader is do a shock and awe on them and say, oh, guess what? Today we're going to vote on this. And I used to hate that when I was in any organization or in any board, because I'm also on other nonprofit and other boards as well. And the worst way you can get on the way you can get on my bad side the easiest is by all of a sudden always coming up with an idea a day before a board meeting or a day before a meeting and expecting us to vote on it. Because my number one rule, and I'm trying to emphasize this, is that I don't want to do it faster. I want to do it better. And so by ensuring that I treat all the other leaders with that respect, that's what I'm expecting from them as well. And so it's not the challenge of working with other powerful leaders. It's the opportunity, because hopefully they have a different mindset. And this, to me, this is where the DEI and things come into place, is that you want that different mindset so that you can offer varying offers to your members instead of the same cookie cutter thing every time.
Interesting. So that's a lot of relationship management you have to do with people from around the world, literally around the world in different countries whose language may not be. Is that what you spend most of your time doing? Like if I look at, Jimmy, President ISSA International, is it a bunch of one-on-ones? Do you travel there? How do you
It, it
maintain?
is a it is a bunch of one-on-ones, and so it's always funny because when I started in July, as I was saying, my children got used to, we would just travel all over the place and have all the fun and do the stuff. And all of a sudden in July, I'm in meetings nonstop. And my meetings generally had to start at about 6 a.m. Pacific time, because that was the latest I felt that I could meet people on the East Coast and other parts of the world, where on the East Coast, 6 a.m. is 9 a.m. And that's kind of slow for certain people. So I had to do a lot of meetings because I'm a known entity in a lot of people's eyes, but there are certain parts of the world and the geographic location that I'm not a known entity. So I had to let them understand who I was. I had to do a lot of town hall meetings to explain the direction of ISSA, why we're going to be an amazing organization, why we are an amazing organization. I had to do that constantly. And then I do a lot of local visits to local chapters throughout the world, or wherever they're at, because there's always that authentic, you need to look at somebody in the eye, you need to understand body language, and you need to be willing to listen to the good and the bad on a local level, and not just over a computer screen. Even though that is a good asset, that's not the only asset. And as the president, I have to try my best to meet people where they are.
Interesting. I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I love human interaction. I hated COVID. I totally agree with you. And actually, I find that, for people who do drink, going out for drinks after work is more impactful in moving any agenda I have forward.
Yes.
And then like issuing a command in an email or a Slack message. Like it really makes a difference. All right. So you find that's good. Let's move on to the next question. So from your view as an international leader in cybersecurity, how do you navigate the evolving technological landscape? And maybe you can get into that evolving technical landscape from your view of the world and your organization and what you're reading or seeing.
So one of the first things that I realized is that there's a lot of things that I don't know that I should know. And the only way for me to figure this out is by surrounding myself with as many smart, varied thinking people as possible. So the first thing I started doing almost immediately is start reaching out to people saying, will you please be my advisor? Will you please join this? We have what's called special interest groups or committees. And so I wanted one called Emerging Technologies that did nothing but think about what's after AI. Obviously, AI is here, but what's next? What is quantum next? Is the next level of crypto next? What is next? We think we know, but everybody thought they knew what they thought zero trust was the end all be all. And so, for me, that was one of the first things I tried to do, while also leveraging my board by constantly asking my board, like, what are you thinking? What can we do better? What are the gaps? Because we do have, and I'll reach out to my international board members and say, what is, for instance, we have one from Italy. And I'm like, so what do they expect us to do? What kind of value can we do for our members in Italy? What kind of values can we do for our members out of Poland? And what do they see at their level? Because one of the big issues that we're seeing internationally is that America is a pro-corporate, pro-tech environment, where in Europe, we're seeing what the sense of what we call the blue wall of legislation, where they're regulating everything from AI to privacy. You have GDPR, you have the new AI privacy, and they're all against technology. They're all like, And so if you're in compliance, Europe is a great place to be because they're making you do all these compliance things. So understanding the different mindsets of when you go to Europe, they look at companies in a totally different lens than how we do in America and how you do in Japan. And one of the other things that changed about the landscape is that because AI is, to me, I was talking to a peer, AI is the internet now. Like it used to be, some people were on the internet, some people weren't. If you weren't on the internet, if you weren't going to the cloud, you weren't surviving. Same thing with AI. If you're not embracing AI, if you're not trying to utilize it in all your day-to-day activity, you won't really be thriving, surviving. So trying to understand how different international companies, how different international just governments are utilizing AI. For instance, Japan just legalized where there's no copyright violation for AI when it's being used because they understand that AI is AI now is almost like a country's like best asset to almost achieve economic domination or a lot of economic prosperity. So you have to embrace that, or you get left behind. If you see what what DeepSeek did to the market share of OpenAI over a week, just because they came out with a newer AI model or stole OpenAI's model. So you understand the impact of that, and by having peers around you who said, "Yeah, Jimmy, I could have told you," and we've been talking about this, and so hopefully releasing papers and working with amazing minds is how we stay, at least if not in front of it, on parallel with the changing environment.
Wow, very interesting. AI will eat AI.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and the pace of change is rapid. Yeah, it's pretty rapid. Um, let's talk about that a little bit more, right? So you're like, okay, different countries have different governments and different policies and different privacy. In your role as a leader, and you have members in all of these places and all of these companies. So what are the discussions or what's the value add around this? And maybe tell me more about these committees that you have, these
Yes.
subcommittees that you have.
So
Then I want to come back to the board question.
yeah, so the value add is being able to share these ideas with people who are going through similar issues as you are. So one of the things, so I live in the Bay Area of California, and I'm privileged enough to be around a lot of brilliant tech minds and a lot of venture capitalists who you go out and all they're talking about is AI or the world of venture capital. And so you think that everybody knows about venture capitalists or everybody understands the latest technological achievement from Meta or Google or what have you, because their engineers are right next to you at the nut house down in, you know, you know, down in Stanford having some drinks with you. But when you reach outside your bubble, you realize that's a bubble of Silicon Valley, and not everybody has those bubbles. And so what I like to think about is ISA local chapters. It's like having that bubble at your local chapter where you get to talk to like-minded people in your area. So you may be in Nashville, Tennessee, but the problems that you see in security around your local government, your small, medium businesses will be very similar to all your peers around you. Same with from an enterprise perspective. And so what that empowers is that each local chapter has their own value proposition that they can offer, such as we can ensure that the training that you get is adequate and appropriate for your area of expertise. Meaning, if you're in Europe, right, and you learn more about um, how to be more privacy focused, um, how to understand the venture capitalist system in Europe, which is totally different than it is in Israel, and it's totally different than it is in Silicon Valley. And so by understanding that and by having your local chapter where you have conversations, you have meetings about that, you have presentations about that, that makes hopefully you not only a better security practitioner, but a business-minded employee.
Wow. Um, Almost akin to like a information sharing, association. Uh, right?
we hope that you're getting some information sharing, but that's one of the things that I'm always pushing back at members is that because obviously I want to give our members the best value possible, but you can't give value if you're not getting value back. And so ISSA as a local chapter and ISA as an organization, we can provide all the training. We can, connect you with all these discounts and things. But the only way that the local chapters become amazing is when each member is talking to each other and not at each other. And so by sharing your latest ideas, sharing your latest findings with the membership makes it's almost like the rising tide, lifts all the boats, right? Like making sure that we share as much as possible so that we can empower ourselves to be stronger together, more resilient together.
Interesting. Talking to each other, not at each other. Okay,
Yes.
so less keynote speakers and more socialization amongst ourselves. You're right. I'm gonna like take that little nugget and put it in my jobs to be done for this year. Let's double click on the board thing. So,
Yes.
I was taking a training at work, and somebody mentioned, I have my own private board of directors who, have helped me navigate my career. Some of them are advocates, so they introduce me to people. So you have the ISSA board of directors. How do they help you? And do you have your own personal board of directors, or are you at a leader and you're like, well, I don't need it anymore because I'm the president?
To me, I always need a board of directors around me or a group of peers who you can trust to give you negative and positive feedback. If I only surround myself with people who tell me what I did right and how to do it good going in the future, I will never learn from my mistakes. Especially as I was beginning, I realized, I was on the board because I was on the international board for 4 years before I became the president. So I thought I knew how it worked. I had no idea how it worked. There was so much involved in what's called like the executive suite, which consists of the president, the vice president, the chief operating officer, the executive director, and the CFO. That happens. That the scale of it is crazy because you're an international company. So you when you hear that word, you think, yeah, I know what it means because I was on a local chapter. Yeah, I know what it means because we have volunteers. But when you actually have paid staff, that if you don't do a good job, you have to let people go. You can't hire new people. That's on you as the president and on you as an organization. So I try to lean on my personal board of directors to always ask, like, what is it like in your organization? How do you go from having negative in your finances to hopefully a positive revenue run rate? How do you motivate your staff in terms of money isn't always the motivation for people. So what else are you doing to motivate people besides that? And then for my international board of directors, they're on an international board for a reason. What is the reason? How can I find a motivation to ensure that I'm not kowtowing, I'm not trying to be underhanded, but really trying to work in a collaborative way with them so that we can achieve our mission objective in terms of having ISA members be the best, most intelligent, most sought after members in the world.
What is kowtowing?
So kowtowing is when you only say what somebody wants to hear. So you say, yes, you're right. It's like an Asian thing. So kowtowing meant like you always would see like the local politician, and whatever local politician said, you would say, that sounds great. Because one of the problems that you would have if you don't have a good group of board of directors around you is as soon as you achieve a position of power, everybody below you will always say, yes, your ideal is great, even if it's terrible. And the last thing I want is to project or support or even come up with a terrible idea, but nobody told me it was terrible. It's like the emperor without any clothes, right? Like you never could say that the emperor didn't have clothes. You just have to act like he did. So the same thing with kowtowing. Like you can never tell the president or the CEO that his ideal is terrible because he's the president and CEO. Like And that those are the people I have to get rid of as soon as possible, because I know I make mistakes on a constant basis. Hopefully they get less and less, more minor and minor. And by people telling me that I made that mistake, hopefully I get to, make up for it faster. It's almost like an agile development environment, where you keep iterating on your code to make it better and better over time.
Yeah, it's funny because as I've progressed in my career, I really value like at the end of a sprint when everyone does this anonymous feedback, because I was like, that's really, and usually like, and I tell people in Scrum, like managers out, like this is for like, the engineers or the people who are actually doing the work, because, and maybe it was kowtowing, or you don't want people to like be,
Yes.
you want it frank and open, like this is
Yes.
how I feel, and that's your time to get that feedback. And also, as I've gone on in my career, that negative feedback is actually the golden nugget, right? I think because, I see myself very subjectively, but that's not reality, because reality is what everyone else sees
Yes.
or
No,
hears or
exactly.
interprets. So unless I take time to keep quiet, and if you're an extrovert, it's hard to do, and listen and digest, right? So it's not just hear, you have to digest it, right? Because even if I'm quiet and I hear something negative, my instinct is to challenge it or be like, no, you're wrong. Well, what are you talking about? Like, even if I'm not saying that, my face will probably say that, on my eyes. But then, I have to like let it digest and marinate, and then be like, okay, well, how do I pivot or how do I adjust? Because this is somebody else's perception, which is actually more valid than my perception of myself.
And what you're saying is so true. And what I always try to do is, when I hear something negative, instead of me fighting it against it, I'll ask a group of other people, because the same trait that may make somebody a strong alpha may make them, a domineering psychopath, right? It's like that sword. So you gotta hopefully always be reflective in how you're doing things, how it is coming across to people, because and this is the other thing about being an international organization. Different cultures treat things differently. Not every culture wants the strong alpha male. Where in America we're like, oh, be strong leader, and be be outspoken. When that's not, to me, I've discovered that that's not leadership. That's bravado. Like, leadership is finding out what's the golden nuggets of your team and of your board of directors, and empowering them to be amazing. And so that was one of my first goals as a president. I told them, I don't want to be the face of the organization. I want our amazing board of directors, because as I was alluding to earlier, all of our board of directors are nationally known, if not internationally known. So why not use that to our value to improve the status of ISSA by having them go out to their local chapters and to chapters in the area and just, be present. And so, that's
Very interesting. All right. So, last question, and we'll wrap it up. What advice would you give to leaders and cybersecurity professionals to build and maintain resilient teams?
over. So for me, honestly, a resilient team would mean multiple people understanding multiple areas. And so one of my first rules is that when I got on the board of directors and the president, is that two people have to know how to do something. Even though your job may be CFO, your job may be COO, my job may be president, whatever, I'm in all the areas that we're doing things on an international basis, two people have to know, because burnout happens, winning the lottery happens, and family happens, and health. So understanding that happens, you have to ensure that you empathize as well, because resilience is when people can come to you when they're doing good and when they're doing bad and tell you about it, so that you can either low balance that. For instance, if somebody's going on PTO, you offset some of the things that they're doing to somebody else or team temporarily, you understand that that's only temporary because, yes, you may be laying people off, but that doesn't mean the job is getting easier. So the way you build resiliency is to build in enough cushion, but enough load balancing among your team so that when something fails, wins the lottery, has issues, nothing overall, falls down. It doesn't run on optimal. Like you can't have a resilient optimal team because you can't have it both ways. You can't have a team of experts, but also a team of, resilient generalists. So you you have to understand and also understanding the skill set that you currently have available, doing the gap analysis of also what you need on your team. Meaning, yes, we have a lot of leaders, but we don't have a lot of, we have a lot of chiefs. We don't have a lot of Indians or, engineers. And so how do we fix that? Um, and, or do we need, instead of, international directors, do we need some international sub-directors or deputy directors to help build that resilient team? And obviously salary comes into it. And also, what are you offering? Like, why would they even join your team? So it's not, as you were asking the question, it's not only building a resilient team, but how do you maintain that team? Because as people get more talented, or they either get tired, they get bored, or they get complacent. So trying to figure out that mix.
Jimmy, thank you so much for your time this Friday. Very inspirational words. I know I'm taking some of what you gave me and trying to weave it into my day to day as I climb up that corporate ladder. Thank you for your time and enjoy the weekend, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, Hakeem. Thank you, Cyversity. I hope you have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye bye.
Okay, take care.